Well, let's talk to Rob Williams now. He's a trade unionist and member of the Socialist Party. Rob, thank you for joining me today. A lot of people are worried about the fact that the unions are doing too well. Basically, they're getting a lot out of the government. They're getting a lot of money. And listen, I'm a capitalist. I want people to earn as much money as possible. Good for the train drivers getting 70 grand out of the government. But the fact is that we thought they weren't going to strike anymore, but now they're going to strike again.
No, I think what you're doing is mixing a couple of things up there. First of all, the train drivers are not going to get £70,000 off the government. They're going to get perhaps,
pay rises to an average of £70,000.
Well, at the end of the day, they have very responsible jobs. I'm sure you recognise that when you jump on a train. These are workers, by the way. They haven't had a pay rise for 5 years. This pay rises are going to have to be backdated 3 years because of that. And this isn't a choice, by the way, between one group of the working class and another, because I'm sure the train drivers don't support the removal of the eating allowance for pensioners, and of course,
I'm sure the train drivers don't do that. I'm not saying that they would want any older people to not have a winter fuel allowance, but the fact is that the government, anyway, and I'm not blaming you for this, have made a choice. They have made a fiscal choice. They said, we don't have enough, we have a finite pot of money here. We're giving money to public sector workers, 5.5% pay rises, that's over inflation. We're giving 22% to junior doctors. We're giving 15% to train drivers. And now border force people are on strike. More train drivers are going to be on strike over the next number of weekends. And it doesn't look as if there's any end in sight to this industrial action. But hold on, just let me finish, and then I promise I'll let you talk. But actually, there are pensioners who are being told, we don't have enough money for you, and we're being told in the budget that taxes are going to go up. And that's the problem, isn't it?
Well, first of all, the dispute that you mentioned in LNER, by the way, is state-run. LNER, this is a separate local dispute about the role of management in that company. That is a different dispute to the one that we talked about.
It's still train drivers on strike. It's still people not being able to get to places.
Yeah, well, those train drivers were forced to take action like other public sector workers because we had the biggest cost of living squeeze in modern history. And those workers, like working class people generally, including the pensioners, were suffering from sky-high inflation, massive food inflation, and of course heating bills.
You're not on the breadline if you're earning £70,000 a year, are you?
Well, you could very well be, suffering as those workers had. They didn't have a pay rise for 5 years, and that's.
I mean, lots of people in the public sector, in the private sector, haven't had a pay rise in 5 years either. We've got low inflation, yet very high pay awards to people, and the fact is that everybody's going to pay for this.
And that's why workers in the private sector have also been taking strike action over the last few years. Why do you think there has been a union recognition campaign in Amazon, which 2,500 workers lost by 28 votes against one of the most powerful companies in the world? This isn't a choice between different sections of the working class against each other.
But that's the choice the government is making. I'm not blaming you. I'm not blaming you. I'm saying that there is a finite pot of cash, and if you give lots and lots of money to people in pay increases, then the taxpayer eventually has to pay for that. The money only comes from four different places. It comes from growth. It comes. Just let me finish. I promise I'll let you speak. It either comes from growth, it comes from tax rises, it comes from money from other bits of government, or it comes from borrowing. That can only come from those four places.
It's typical. We've had 4 decades of brutal neoliberal capitalist policies, and of course that's been part of the course of the last 14 years, where the wealth gap between rich and poor has got wider and wider. I had a look on the stats before I came in this programme. The Elon Musk, his wealth is the same as the annual budget for the NHS. One person has the same as 67 million people who treated under the NHS. We live in a totally unequal society. The wealth has got greater over the last 14 years, let alone what has come before that. This isn't about working class people against each other. This is about the people who've had a great living over the last period, the fat cats. They're the ones who should be paying, and that's why we should be.
But the choice that Labour is going to make, but Labour is going to put up taxes on working people. That is going to happen as a result of these pay awards.
I think many trade unionists, myself included, think the Labour government should be going far further. They shouldn't be attacking pensioners. They shouldn't be.
Where does the money come from?
The money is in society. The money is there in wealth, but it's going to take a transformative program to take on the fat cats. You know the scores well. I'm sure you've had in his program as well. The parasites in the privatized companies, the likes of Thames Water, who have made a killing over decades, and now want the taxpayer to allow them to increase their prices by 50%. Those companies were all publicly owned. We were told it's better for society if they're taken into private hands. What has happened? The fat cats have got
Well, I mean,
richer.
you just mentioned a second ago that LNER is a publicly owned company, and things aren't great there. I mean, people are striking as a result of how that's run.
It fell into public ownership because the private fat cats couldn't run it.
Well, it doesn't seem the government's doing a great job of running it either, given that your comrades are striking.
No, but the truth is that the rail workers have been on strike, been forced into strike action across all the train operating companies,
which goes to show that it's not being run as you want it to be run, which defeats your argument.
Most of whom that are still privately owned, by the way, and they should be all brought back.
But you've just talked about the one that's publicly owned. You've just talked about the one that's publicly owned, and it's clearly not run to the satisfaction of members.
It's not run in the way that we should run a publicly owned company. It's run like a private company, but in public hands. What we need is real socialist public ownership, a properly integrated public transport system, just as that should happen to the energy companies. And a place that's dear to my heart, Tata Steel, where we face the prospect of thousands of steelworkers being thrown out of work because this system cannot provide for ordinary working class people.
But that's more states. I don't want anybody to be out of work. I don't want any Tata Steel. I don't want any Tata Steel worker to be out of work. I don't want anybody to lose their job. But if you throw more and more state subsidies at a company that is not working, what's the point of that?
They don't have state subsidies.
But if you do, if they get a bailout.
Well, no, what should happen is those companies should be taken back into real public ownership with a proper plan. Don't forget, by the way,
but they'd have to be bought off the fat cats. The fat cats would then make a profit, would they not? That defeats your argument as well.
The fat cat bankers 15 years ago were delighted to get bailouts, if you remember. You and me and everyone else who pays taxes.
But if you pay them for companies like Tata Steel, they're going to get even more money. Surely you're not going to be happy with that.
No, the truth is, though, is that what I'm saying is this system, the way we run society, cannot provide for ordinary people, can't provide for the pensioners, for workers, certainly can't provide for the thousands of steel workers that are facing unemployment.
Let me ask you a question. Okay, let me ask you a question, Rob, about what Ross Clark said a minute ago. I don't know if you heard it, but he said, I wonder what your response to Ross Clark saying that London Underground should be automated.
Well, the truth is that London Underground couldn't be automated. They hasn't got the technology, but it's the same old, isn't it? You know, try and blur and distract the issues. The reality isn't about the thousands of hard-working people that big business depends on in Britain and around the country, is trying to distract people with this false argument. The reality is COVID showed that the vast bulk of society depends on ordinary people. They're the ones who saved society during the COVID. NHS workers, it's been estimated, has lost the equivalent of a year's wages over the last 14 years. Teachers have lost 9%. Workers in the private and public sector.
But if you pay them, sorry, this just comes back to my central argument, Rob. If you keep, okay, all right, fair enough. But if you keep raising that money, the money has to come from somewhere. And we're back to what Margaret Thatcher said, which is that the problem with socialism is that you eventually run out of other people's money.
No, the problem is it's our money, but it's in the hands of the fat cats and the...
But they're going to raise taxes on us. They're going to raise taxes, you, me, the people who work for Tata Steel, the train drivers, we're all going to be paying more tax. That's what Labour's going to do. Well,
Labour, unfortunately, isn't going to do that, but what they should...
They've said they will. They've said they're going to raise taxes in the 30th of October. That is fact. That's what Rachel Reeves has said.
What they should be doing is taking the money off those...
But they're not going to.
No, I know they're not, and that's what they should be doing. But more than that, we should be looking at the economic levers in the economy, the banks, the big companies. Those should be brought into the realm of the public sector for a socialist plan of production. We've seen your method over the last 40 years. We've seen the privatization.
But your method, Rob. Okay, all right. Well, I'm a capitalist and we disagree on that. But my point is that your method, socialism, was offered in 2019 and Jeremy Corbyn did not win?
Jeremy Corbyn, by the way, in 2017 in that election, in the first election
also didn't win,
got 2 to 3 million votes more than Keir Starmer did.
Doesn't matter. Still didn't win.
No, he didn't. He didn't win in that election. But what he did have was a transformative program that won 2 to 3 million votes.
That the country rejected.
He got 6% more votes.
You can throw as many stats as you like. Jeremy Corbyn did not become Prime Minister twice. It was rejected twice.
He didn't because the Tories were crushed during the last election. And by the way, the crushing of the Tory party on July the 4th, I don't think was so much about Keir Starmer's programme, but it was a devastating judgment by ordinary working class people, old and young, pensioners working. It was a devastating judgment by them against the system that the Tory party has been attempting to run over the last period.
All right, Rob, thank you for your thoughts. Really appreciate you coming on. Rob Williams there, who's a trade unionist and member of the Socialist Party. I don't think